Bella was only a teenager when she learned the most dangerous people aren't strangers, their family, the one who sits at your dinner table, the one who hug you at your birthday party, the one you're supposed to trust without question. This is a story about a young woman whose childhood was stolen by someone she called Uncle James, a man battling addiction, a man who violated every boundary that should protect a child, a man who left Bella carrying a secret so heavy it nearly destroyed her. A secret that grew inside her body, forcing the truth into the light. What you're about to hear isn't easy, but it's real, and it needs to be told because somewhere right now another child is living in silence, carrying shame that isn't theirs to carry. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Let's spread awareness together because stories like Bella's remind us that silence protects predator while destroying victim, and that needs to change. Bella was 15 when her world collapsed. But to understand the devastation, you need to know who she was before everything changed. She was the kind of girl teachers described as respectful, the kind of daughter who helped with dishes without being asked, who remembered to call her grandmother on Sunday, who had planned for her future that include college and becoming a nurse because she wanted to help people. Her bedroom walls were covered with motivational quotes and pictures of places she dreamed of visiting someday. She kept a journal where she wrote about her hopes, her fears, her small dramas of high school life that felt enormous at the time. She had friends who trusted her with their secrets, parents who thought they knew their daughter completely, a life that from the outside looked perfectly normal, perfectly safe. Her family was close, or at least that's what everyone believed. They gathered for Sunday dinner at Bella's grandmother's house, celebrated holidays together, support each other through hard times. Uncle James was always there, always part of the background of Bella's childhood, always present at family events. To Bella, he wasn't a threat, he was just Uncle James, her mother's younger brother, someone she'd known her entire life. Family meant safety in Bella's world. Family meant people who would protect you, people who had your best interests at heart. That's what she'd been taught. That's what she'd always believed. That's what made what happened next so completely devastating. Think about your own family for a moment. The people you trust without thinking, the relative you see at gathering, the one you've known since childhood. Can you imagine one of them becoming your worst nightmare? That's what happened to Bella, and it could happen to anyone's child, which is exactly why this story matters, why we need to talk about it even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges everything we want to believe about family and safety. James had been struggling for years. Everybody in the family knew it, but nobody quite knew what to do about it. He was a drug addict, not the kind who ended up on street corners, but the kind who held down job just long enough to get fired, who borrowed money he never paid back, who disappeared for days and when he showed up, looking thinner, more hollow, making promises about getting clean that everyone knew were lies. The family made up excuses for him because that's what family do, right? They said he was going through a rough patch, that he just needed support, that abandoning him would make things worse. Bella's mother, being the older sister, felt particularly responsible for James, felt like giving up on him would be a moral failure. So James became a fixture in their life, showing up when he needed something, crashing on their couch when his own life became too chaotic, eating dinner with them while Bella's parents tried to pretend everything was normal. There were red flags. Of course they were. There always are in retrospect. James' mood swung wildly from manic energy to dark silence. He'd make comments that made people uncomfortable, cross boundaries in small ways that adults noticed but dismissed, tell jokes that went too far, and claim everyone was too sensitive. At family gathering, he would seek out the younger relatives, position himself as the cool uncle who understand them better than their parents did, offer to help with homework or give ride home from school. Looking back, Bella's mother would torment herself with all the signs she'd missed. all the moments that should have triggered alarm bells, but didn't because she'd been trained to see her brother as troubled but harmless, as someone who needed help rather than someone dangerous. The family had enabled James for so long that they've lost the ability to see him clearly, lost the instinct to protect their children from him because doing so would mean acknowledging that their brother, their son, their uncle was capable of unspeakable things. It's easier to ignore warning signs than to confront uncomfortable truths, easier to make excuses than to take action, and that's exactly what James counted on. He knew the family would choose loyalty over suspicion, knew that even if Bella tried to tell someone, their first instinct would be to doubt, to minimize, to find explanation that didn't require them to believe that someone they love was a predator. The addiction wasn't the worst thing about Uncle James, it was just the most visible thing, the distraction that kept everyone from seeing the real danger. Behind the drug use was something much darker, something that had nothing to do with addiction and everything to do with a complete absence of morality, a willingness to destroy a child's life for his own gratification. The line that should never be crossed. It started so gradually that Bella didn't recognize it as the beginning of something terrible. James would single her out at family gathering, ask about school, compliment her in ways that felt slightly off, but not alarming enough to mention to anyone. He volunteered to pick her up from school when her parents were working late, showed up at her soccer games, positioned himself as someone who cared, someone trustworthy, someone safe. To Bella's parents, this looked like James trying to be a better person, trying to contribute something positive to the family for once in his chaotic life. They were actually grateful that he was taking an interest in Bella, though maybe having a role model responsibility would help him get his life together. They had no idea they were watching a predator grooming his victim. The first time James crossed the line, Bella was too shocked to understand what was happening, too confused to process the wrongness of it. He made it seem almost normal, almost like something uncles and niece did. And when Bella's face showed confusion and discomfort, James was ready with explanation. He told her this was their special bond, that she was mature for her age, that this proved he trusts her with adult secrets. Then come the threat disguised as concern, warnings that telling anyone would hurt the family, that her parents had enough stress without this, that people might not believe her anyway because she was just a kid and he was an adult. He told her that she'd participated, that she was just as guilty, that speaking up would get her in trouble too. Every word was a carefully constructed lie designed to trap Bella in silence, to make her believe that what was happening was somehow her fault, that she had the power to stop it, but was choosing not to, when in reality she was a child being manipulated by an adult who knew exactly what he was doing. This is how predators operate. They don't just violate bodies, they violate minds. They twist reality until victims can't trust their own perceptions, can't distinguish between what's happening to them and what they are responsible for. Bella started carrying a weight that no 15-year-old should ever have to carry, a secret that grew heavier every day, shame that poisoned every interaction, every relationship, every moment of her existence. The abuse continued, escalated, became more frequent and more invasive, and with each violation Bella retreated further into herself, built walls between who she used to be and who she was becoming. She stopped laughing at dinner, stopped volunteering answers in class, stopped making plans with friends. Her parents noticed the change, but attributed it to typical teenage moodiness, never imagining that their daughter was being destroyed by someone sitting right across the table from them. James knew he could continue because he'd successfully isolated Bella, made her believe that speaking up was more dangerous than enduring the abuse, that her silence was the only thing keeping her family intact. What Bella didn't understand yet was that her silence wasn't protecting anyone. It was only protecting James, giving him permission to continue, to escalate, to destroy her piece by piece, while everyone around them remained oblivious. She thought she was being strong by staying quiet, thought she was being mature by handling it herself, when in reality she was being victimized twice, once by the abuser itself and once by the lies that convinced her she had to endure it alone. Bella's world became smaller, contracted down to just getting through each day without falling apart completely. She started making excuses to avoid family dinners, faking headaches and stomach aches, claiming she had too much homework, anything to reduce the time she had to spend in the same room as Uncle James. But avoiding him completely was impossible because he was always around, always present at family gatherings, always finding ways to corner her, to remind her of their secrets, to maintain his control over her. At school, Bella sat in the classes, feeling like she was watching her life from somewhere outside herself, disconnected from her body, going through the motions while internally screaming. The teacher noticed her grades slipping, noticed she seemed distracted and withdrawn, but they didn't connect the dot because they didn't know what picture those dots would form. They sent progress report home, suggested tutoring, asking if everything was okay at home, and Bella learned to smile and say she was just tired, just stressed about school, just dealing with normal teenage stuff. Her friend noticed too, noticed she'd stop accepting invitation to hang out, stop sharing the gossip and drama that used to fuel their conversation. But when they asked what was wrong, Bella had perfected the art of deflection, of making people believe she was fine when she was dying inside. The isolation wasn't just external, it was internal too. Bella began to feel disconnected from her own body, like it wasn't really hers anymore, like it was just something that existed for other people to use. She'd look in the mirror and not recognize the gear staring back at her. See a stranger wearing her face, carrying her shame. The guilt was crushing, overwhelming, a constant presence that James had planted in her mind that grew like poison, choking out any possibility of joy or peace or normalcy. She believed she was somehow responsible for what was happening, believed that she should have been able to stop it, believed that speaking up would prove that she was complicit rather than victimized. This is the cruelest weapon predators use, not physical force, but psychological manipulation. The ability to make victims believe they are guilty of crimes committed against them. Bella carried this guilt everywhere, felt it in every interaction, every moment, every breath. She couldn't tell her mother because what if she didn't believe her? What if she did believe her but blamed her anyway? What if the truth destroyed the family and everyone blamed Bella for being the one who spoke up? This question kept her trapped in silence, kept her suffering alone, kept James free to continue his abuse unchecked. And then one day, standing in her bathroom, feeling nauseous and exhausted in ways that went beyond normal teenage tiredness, Bella realized something was wrong with her body, something that would force her secret into the open whether she was ready or not. The pregnancy test showed two pink lines, and in that moment, Bella's entire world shattered. She was 15 years old and pregnant by her uncle, carrying physical evidence of abuse that couldn't be hidden or explained away. She sat on the bathroom floor, staring at those two lines, and felt the walls closing in around her. This wasn't supposed to happen, not to girls like her, not in families like hers, and yet it was an undeniable proof that the nightmare she'd been living was real and getting worse. Her first thought wasn't about options or solution. It was pure panic, terror, so complete it paralyzed her ability to think clearly about anything. How could she possibly explain this to her parents? How could she tell them what Uncle James had been doing without them thinking she was lying, without them blaming her, without destroying every relationship in her family? The fear of disclosure was almost as overwhelming as the pregnancy itself because James' voice was still in her head, still telling her that no one would believe her, that she would be the one in trouble, that speaking up would hurt everyone except him. Bella spent 3 days in a fog of denial and terror, going through school, eating dinner with her family, pretending everything was normal, while internally screaming, unable to sleep, unable to think about anything except the impossible situation she was trapped in. She researched her option online late at night, learned about abortion and adoption and teenage pregnancy, but every option required her to tell someone, and telling someone meant revealing the secret she'd been forced to keep, meant accepting that her life would never be the same, meant blowing up her family's entire understanding of themselves. The weight of it all was crushing, literally crushing. Bella felt like she couldn't breathe, like there was no way out and no way forward. She had dark thoughts in those 3 days, thoughts about running away, about disappearing, about ending everything, thoughts that scared her when she could step outside them enough to recognize how dangerous they were. But something in Bella refused to surrender completely, some core of strength she didn't know she possessed. She thought about her dream of becoming a nurse, of helping people, and realized those dreams didn't have to die just because Uncle James had tried to destroy her. She thought about other girls who might be suffering in silence, other families where predators were operating unchecked, and understood that her silence wasn't just about protecting herself or her family. It was about allowing James to continue, to potentially hurt others, to get away with destroying life. So Bella made a decision, probably the hardest decision of her young life. She was going to tell, going to speak up, going to trust that someone somewhere would believe her and help her. If you're still watching, comment a black heart emoji to show support for victims who suffered in silence, because your support matters, your awareness matters, your willingness to believe survivors can change life and save future. The disclosure happened during a routine doctor's appointment. Bella's mother had noticed she hasn't been feeling well and scheduled a checkup, thinking maybe it was anemia or stress or something simple that could be fixed with vitamins and rest. The nurse who took Bella's vital signs asked routine questions, including when her last period was, and Bella's hesitation made the nurse pause, made her look more closely at this 15-year-old girl who seemed terrified of a simple medical question. The nurse, who'd been trained to recognize signs of abuse, asked if Bella felt safe at home, and something in her tone, something genuinely concerned and caring, broke through all of Bella's defenses. She started crying, couldn't stop crying, and through those tears came words she'd never planned to say out loud. Words about Uncle James, about the abuse, about the pregnancy, about the terror and shame she'd been carrying alone for months. The nurse's face changed, shifted from routine professionalism to deep concern, and she told Bella something no one had ever told her before, that what she was describing was not her fault, that it was abuse, that there were people who could help, that Bella didn't have to face this alone. Those words, "it's not your fault," were the first time anyone had said them, the first time Bella had heard out loud what some part of her desperately needs to believe. The nurse brought in a doctor, the doctor brought in a social worker, and suddenly Bella was surrounded by adults who believed her, who were taking her seriously, who were treating what happened as the crime it was rather than the shameful secret James had convinced her it needed to be. The doctor explained they were mandatory reporters, that they had to contact Child Protective Services and law enforcement, while part of Bella felt relieved that the decision was being taken out of her hands. Another part felt terrified, because now there was no going back. Now the truth was going to explode through her family, and she had no control over the damage it would cause. The social worker sat with Bella while she called her mother, And that phone call was one of the hardest moments of Bella's life. Hearing her mother's confusion tune to shock tune to horror as Bella tried to explain what had been happening, why she hadn't said anything sooner, why her daughter was at the doctor's office, revealing that her own brother had been abusing her child. Bella's mother arrived at the hospital in a state of barely controlled panic, her face pale, her hands shaking, searching Bella's face for confirmation that this nightmare was real. When she saw Bella, she broke down completely, crying and apologizing, and saying over and over that she didn't know, that she should have known, that she should have protected her baby. Then they heard each other's while social workers and doctors moved around them, making phone calls, filing reports, setting in motion the legal machinery that would eventually bring James to justice. Law enforcement arrived within hours. Detectives who specialize in sexual abuse cases, and they interviewed Bella with a gentleness that surprised her, treating her like a victim rather than a suspect, which was a relief because part of Bella had internalized James' warning that she would be the one in trouble if anyone find out. They explained they will be bringing James in for questioning, that there will be an investigation, that Bella might have to testify. And while none of that sounded easy, it all sounded better than continuing to live in silence. But the family reaction wasn't what Bella expected. Her parents believed her immediately without question, without hesitation. But not everyone in the family was supportive, and that's where the story takes a turn that makes it even more painful. Within days of Bella's disclosure, her extended family fractured into opposing camps, those who believed Bella and those who couldn't or wouldn't accept that James was capable of what she'd described. Her grandmother, James' mother, went into complete denial, insisted that Bella must be confusing or lying or trying to get James in trouble over some teenage disagreement. Some aunts and uncles took similar positions, not outright calling Bella a liar, but suggesting that maybe things weren't as bad as she was making them sound. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Bella was exaggerating. Anything to avoid confronting the reality that their family member was a child predator. This secondary betrayal, this refusal to believe her by people she'd loved and trusted her whole life, was in some way more painful than James' abuse, because at least his action had been clearly wrong, clearly evil. But this family member who defended him were forcing Bella to question her own worth, her own credibility, her own right to be believed and protected. She'd had true relatives that some family members were saying she was attention seeking, that she was trying to destroy James' life, that the pregnancy was probably from some boyfriend and she was blaming James to avoid getting in trouble. This whisper, this doubt, this casual cruelty added new layers of trauma to what Bella was already carrying. The law enforcement moved forward regardless. They arrested James, charged him with multiple counts of sexual abuse of a minor, presented evidence that includes Bella's testimony, medical evidence of the pregnancy, forensic interviews. Eventually, James confessed, though he tried to minimize it, tried to claim Bella had been willing, tried to suggest she'd somehow seduce him. All the predictable defenses of a predator, caught and cornered. The legal process was long and exhausting, months of court appearances and testimony, reliving the abuse over and over for judges and lawyers and juries. Bella had to sit in court and answer questions about the most private, most painful experience of her life, had to watch James sit at the defendant's table, looking nothing like the monster he was. Through all of it, Bella's parents stood by her, attending every court date, held her hand through every difficult moment, but the rest of the family remained fractured. Some relatives stopped speaking to Bella and her mother entirely, choosing James' side in a battle that shouldn't have had sides. Holiday gathering became impossible, and Bella watched her mother pay the cost of choosing to believe her daughter, watch her lose relationship and support system that had existed for decades. Bella felt guilt, irrational guilt that she knew intellectually wasn't her fault, but that felt emotionally crushing anyway. The sense that she destroyed her family by speaking. Eventually, James was convicted, sentenced to 15 years in prison, required to register as a sex offender. But those consequences didn't undo what he had done, didn't erase the trauma, didn't heal the family division. Bella made the agonizing decision to place her baby for adoption, choosing a family she met and approved, staying in contact through letters and pictures, maintaining a connection to this child who was both a reminder of trauma and an innocent life who deserved love and opportunity. That decision was criticized by some people in her life, but it was her decision, made after careful thought and with support from counselor who understood there is no perfect choice in impossible situation. The years after disclosure and trial were years of slow, difficult healing. Bella worked with a trauma therapist who specialized in sexual abuse, processed memory and emotions she'd suppressed, learned coping mechanisms for managing triggers and flashback, gradually rebuilt a sense of self that wasn't defined entirely by what had been done to her. She finished high school, went to community college, pursued her dream of becoming a nurse because she wanted to help people the way she'd been helped, wanted to be the kind of person who believes victims and fights for them. Healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks and bad days, and moments when the trauma felt as fresh at and overwhelming as it had been in the beginning. But there were also victory moments when Bella realized she'd gone a whole day without thinking about James, moment when she felt genuinely happy for the first time in years, moment when she recognized how far she'd come. She reconnected with some family member who doubted her initially, some having realized over time that they've been wrong. Those reconciliations were complicated, never quite erasing the initial betrayal, but providing some measure of healing. She started speaking publicly about her experience, sharing her story at schools and community centers, hoping her word might reach someone living through what she'd survived, might give that person courage to speak up. Every time she told her story, it got easier, and every time someone approached her afterward to say she'd help them understand something important or inspire them to believe a victim in their own life, Bella felt like the trauma was being transformed into something meaningful, something that could prevent future harm. How would you feel if this happened to someone you love? Would you believe them immediately? Or would you look for a reason to doubt? That question matters because your answer could determine whether a victim gets help or retreats back into silence. Bella's story is difficult but important because this type of abuse is far more common than most people realize. According to the Department of Justice, about one-third of child sexual abuse cases involve a family member, and these are just reported cases, which means the real number is certainly higher. The majority of child sexual abuse is committed not by strangers, but by people children knew and trust, often family members or close family friends who have access, who have built trust, who know how to manipulate situations. The warning signs are often subtle, changes in behavior like withdrawal, declining grades, reluctancy to be around certain people. But these signs are easy to miss or misinterpret because they can look like typical adolescent behaviors. What's crucial is that is creating an environment where children feel safe, disclosing abuse, where they know they will be believed and supported rather than blamed or doubted. If a child discloses abuse to you, believe them, full stop. Believe them and support them and report to appropriate authority because your response in that moment can determine whether the child gets help or retreats back into silence. For survivors like Bella, speaking up is an act of tremendous courage, and the response they receive can either support their healing or compound their trauma. We need to get better at believing victims, at understanding that false accusations are rare, while unreported abuse is epidemic, at recognizing that protecting children is more important than protecting adults' reputation or family secrets. As to raise awareness to help people understand the reality of family sexual abuse and the importance of believing and supporting victims. Bella's story could be any family story because predators exist in all communities and they count on people not wanting to believe that someone they know could be capable of such harm. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it to raise awareness, and subscribe for more true story that matter. And tell me what part of Bella's story affects you the most. What will you do differently now that you've heard it? Drop your location in the comments and let's build a global community committed to protecting children and believing survivors.